Picture, if you will, a young man and his mullet, arriving with backpack in hand at Vancouver International Airport back in 2005. This man has only a few dollars to his name, and the feeling that he had finally arrived. But having just traveled thousands of miles to get here, his journey, the one that really mattered, was only just beginning. This is a voyage all of us must take, but only some ever finish. In this episode of the Authentic You podcast, we begin to introduce remedies for employee burnout, and I share my real-life underdog story and the one simple yet profound truth that completely transformed my life. We'll also go back into history to a small, sleepy town in Brazil where not that long ago a new hell was born. It's the incredible true story of the hell of Serra, where men became slaves to their jobs. In this story, get ready for a shock and surprise ending we can all learn from. Welcome to the Authentic You podcast, a mixed potato salad production. My name is Goran Yerkovich, and I'll be your host. In this podcast, we'll share the most underrated and misunderstood stories from life and the incredible true tales from our lost history. We'll investigate the false beliefs that prevent us from reaching our goals and the science-backed lessons to help us remove employee burnout, and so much more. And now let's begin with my real-life underdog story and a transformative lesson I learned that moved me from totally down and in the dumps and burnt out to, well, no longer having a mullet. Hey, my name's Goran Yerkovich, and this is my real-life underdog story. It's one I hope moves you into action if you're still sitting on the fence, because sitting on a fence can be painful, especially if it's made of spiky metal bits. In 2005, I wasn't close to any fence. I was miles away from one. No woman wanted me and no manager would hire me. Why? Because the truth was, I was a complete mess. My life back then was situated smack dab in the middle of Dead End Street. You know, that place perfectly triangulated between faint hope and a bad haircut. Some might even have called a mullet. I call this place rock bottom in my life because my living situation consisted of me and an air mattress on the floor for months, totally broke, and with really no idea of how I was going to change my life. Okay, let's level for a moment, because although this for me was an incredibly low point in my life, a place where I was near financial and mental ruin, I realize in saying this that others have had it far, far worse. If you have lost your home, or the car that you've lived in, or a close family member to COVID, to cancer, to suicide, to some other illness or disease, similar or worse, my heart goes out to you. But you see, for me, this was a time when I'd be forced to walk away from groceries at the checkout counter and eat for 1 week instant noodles and powdered instant potatoes for dinner. It was a place when I'd sit alone on my birthday eating, and I kid you not, an extra meat and gravy hungry man microwavable dinner. In those days, Mom would call from Calgary, worried that I'd finally become homeless, destitute, and on the streets, sleeping on the curb. I tried saying to myself everything was fine, but I knew it wasn't. Because the truth was, back then, I was just one or two more bad decisions from my mom's worst nightmare. And I was going nowhere fast, because there were 3 major false beliefs I continued to hold on to. I didn't believe it was my responsibility to change my life. I didn't believe personal growth was a real or proven thing. And I definitely didn't believe that I actually had the skills or talents or power within me to actually transform my life. So I continued to drift and stumble. For the first month of my glorious arrival in Vancouver, where possibility was in the air, I slept on the floor of my friend's place on an air mattress. The dining room table had been moved out of the way to make space for my sorry self. I was welcome with open arms. 2 months later, they helped escort me to the door, air mattress in hand. Hey, and look, and before you say anything, I have nothing but gratitude for my friends that took me in. It wasn't their responsibility to give me free lodging. And the truth is, I wasted a lot of my time there because, well, I had no idea what or how I was going to get myself a job or a place to live, which I somehow did figure out for the next year, finding a basement apartment with 2 roommates, one from Southampton, the other from Liverpool, taking a horrible call center job that managed to only barely cover most of my bills. But insert inspirational music here. About 8 months into the worst job of my life, I made the profound decision I'd live a better life. I'd find a better job. I'd go to a place that paid more and appreciated me better. I was leaving my low-paying, no good-for-nothing call center job behind. Because all I had to do was put in a little effort, right? So after 3 months and 40 job applications, I officially knew I had reached a new low point. Because not one employer wanted me. Not a single one. Note, as romantic and inspirational as it sounds, simply deciding you want a better life does not mean it happens overnight. Yes, it is an incredibly important first step, but it's just the start. So after all that rejection, I did what any rational, university-educated 27-year-old middle-class kid would do. I blamed the world for everything. If only I was born lucky, smarter, stronger, or well-connected, then I'd finally find my success. And I'd finally know what to do. If those things happened, I'd be rich or famous, or at least not poor. My life would finally change. I'd have money, I'd have a career, I'd find true love, and I'd definitely buy a sports car. I'd put a pool in the backyard after I'd bought a house. I'd spend countless nights on the couch thinking these thoughts over and over again while drinking beer and eating ketchup potato chips, while I watched my favorite TV series of all time, a series whose name's irony escaped me for years, a show called Arrested Development. I'd think to myself, why was this happening to me? My life wasn't supposed to go this way. I didn't deserve this. I'd become a victim of my own life, convinced all my struggles and bad luck were no fault of my own, that there was no way I'd done all of this to myself. Months after all those job applications and no results, something strange happened to me at work. Stuck at my horrible call center job about a year in, I decided to apply for a role internally that I had no business applying for. There were 8 solid candidates, and if you ask most of the managers and my peers back then who they thought would be the best person for that job, well, it wasn't me. I wasn't even the dark horse. I was more like the skinny, underfed, 100-to-1 shot that you just don't waste your hard-earned dollar on. But the thing was, something crazy happened. I got the job. Everyone was shocked, including me. But the manager who hired me saw something I just didn't see in myself. It was something no one saw in me either. The stinging consensus was, almost everyone thought I was the wrong fit for the job. That, well, soon enough, I'd fail. And you know what? In the first few months, I almost did. I struggled. I was in over my head. There was so much I just wasn't good at. There was so much I just couldn't do. I was asked to do data reporting and policy. And if you know me, those are just not my things. I wondered for a brief time if everyone was right. But with the help of my manager, we took a step back and did something that started in motion a journey that completely changed my life. It was an idea that took me from near minimum wage to six-figure consultant, and far beyond that, which we'll share in future podcasts. It is, to this day, the single most important catalyst for the paradigm shift needed if you want to change your life. An idea so simple yet so crucial to your future success. You just have to hear this for yourself. In fact, I still use this overarching concept whenever I need to make a major decision. And I hope it's an idea, a concept, that you begin leveraging too. Okay, now we're going to pause here because I was told if you're new to podcasting, it's actually really good to break things up with segments to keep the audience engaged, and so the podcaster stops rambling. This means we'll conclude my underdog story after a shocking and unbelievable tale out of Brazil called The Hell of Serra Pelada. It's the story of when men became slaves to their jobs. It's a true story with a surprise ending. One that might still apply to you or to someone you know. In January 1979, a local farmer, Genesio Ferreira da Silva, discovered he was sitting on one of the largest deposits of gold in the world. At his remote Brazilian farm, 430 kilometers south of the Amazon River, a surprising thing happened. Nuggets of gold began to wash up on shore. Eventually, one huge nugget, as big as 6.8 kilograms or 15 pounds, and worth over $300,000, was found on the farm. This life-changing gold, filled with hope and promise, was in the tranquil town of Serra Pelada, Brazil. A place where hope quickly transformed to brutality, death, and destruction, where men became slaves in their pursuit of freedom. When the massive gold deposits were revealed, word spread quickly. Brazilians from far and wide trekked to the remote location. The rich and the very poor flocked in droves. Almost overnight, a gold rush was born. Brazil's El Dorado was Serra Pelada. Men arrived in the tens of thousands to this remote place by whatever means necessary. Hope was in the air. But what began in the spirit of freedom and promise quickly descended into something else. A nightmare was born. Welcome to the hell of Serra Pelada, where men became slaves and souls turned to dust. In time, the mining of a mountain in Serra Pelada, which once sat at over 150 meters high, descended into a 140-meter pit of unprecedented despair, danger, and murder. When it was over, the small, quiet, and peaceful town of Serra Pelada was transformed to a place of unimaginable infamy. Serra Pelada descended to a place of darkness. Over 100,000 men worked in the mine without rules or regulations, all in search of gold, all in search, ultimately, of freedom. But their reality became much different. In that moment, something primeval, visceral, and brutal took hold. Something not intended. Something difficult to fathom. The incredible photos taken by Alfredo Jar and Sebastião Salgado forever immortalized Serra Pelada for what the mine became instead, a place of lost souls, where only a lucky few found incredible wealth, while the rest toiled until near death, in a dangerous and self-imposed form of hell. If you'd like to pause now, I've provided a link to these photos in the podcast description. Take a moment now to study them. At first glance, they seem unbelievable, like perhaps a false Hollywood epic, depicting the building of some great pyramid in ancient Egypt, slaves, masters, soldiers, and everything in between. At first glance, it appears these men worked not by choice, but by the rule of some great merciless pharaoh or ancient king. This, all of this, could not have been done by choice. Or could it? Yet the most striking fact of all was that each man who descended into Sierra Pelada did so out of their own free will. When the mines first opened, the workers had no government to protect them, no laws, no police, no rules. This was free market economics at its most extreme and brutal. This became a game of survival of the fittest. Daily fights for dirt plots, positions, and supplies quickly escalated to murder. It is estimated that unsolved murders ranged from 60 to 80 in the town every month at the height of its mining. The strongest survived and continued on, at least to live another day. What incentive drove these men into the endless pit? How did Sierra Pelada work? Small squares of dirt were sold to the miners for harvest, who began the arduous task of sifting through dirt, mud, and rock by hand and shovel. Hope for the miners was simple yet elusive. If you found gold in your bag once at the summit, a percentage was kept just for you. But lifting the heavy bag of mostly dirt, rocks, and mud was a long and dangerous climb. The miners first descended hundreds of feet down into the hellish pit via makeshift thatched and rope-tied wooden ladders. Then once their bag of mud and rocks were filled, they placed their hopes on half-broken backs and began the climb up. Hope remained for fortune and freedom, but most never found this elusive gem. Most continued day after day unearthing more dirt, pain, and a one-way ticket back into an ever-deepening pit. The miners of Sierra Pelada dismantled one mountain to build another. But the truth is, the hell of Sierra Pelada is a modern-day metaphor for many of our lives today. Are we spending our days digging for fortune and treasure in the wrong place? Placing our hopes in a thing or idea never to grant the full satisfactions we crave. A place draining our souls of hope, promise, and real reward. This surely must be the reality for so many. The millions depressed, the invisible faces hooked on sleeping aids or other pills, on alcohol or food addictions to carry them through to just one more day. Which begs questions in the career or life that we may be currently living. Are you climbing a mountain today filled with promise? Are you full of hope for the day ahead? Do you love or at least like what you do as your job? Do you take today as a new opportunity? Or is it something else? The hell of Sierra Pelada is a metaphor for what we're willing to do for money, status, prestige, or other riches. We enter such places wide-eyed, innocent, optimistic. But then one day it happens. The mountain, our place of hope, is carved and emptied. Left instead is a hole, small at first. It grows deeper. We dig the trench ourselves, lost in the process, working towards promotions that don't really matter, and money to spend on more things that we don't truly need. As we dig, we descend further inside. So, we build ladders, like vacation days and unpaid time off, where we have mental breakdowns and take a temporary leave of absence for days, months, or years. But sadly, shockingly, most of us, almost all of us, always go back, just for one more dig, one more try, until a cycle is created and the addiction takes hold. Most of us will choose to remain, until one day we forget why we entered the mine in the first place, deciding perhaps it's safer to remain and never leave. Eventually, the Brazilian government shut down the hell of Sierra Pelada because of the mine's treacherous working conditions. And the last surprising piece to this story is that the miners inside protested its closing. They wanted to remain. They refused to leave. And now, time for part 2 of my Underdog story. We're coming back to a profound moment that changed my life, when a small spark ignited a flame inside that allowed me to master and overcome so many areas and obstacles in my life. Here we'll discuss how you can start applying some of those same ideas too. The funny thing about life-changing moments is they're always small at first, but they can hold a profound idea. In fact, the idea here is so embarrassing in its simplicity, and yet it always works. So what is the idea? Well, it's this. What if I focused on the things I enjoyed doing the most? What if I applied this to my job and to my life? What if I also focused on the things I was really good at? And what if I applied this to my job and to my life? What if, when it came to all the other stuff I wasn't so good at, what if we gave that work to other people? People who wanted that work. People who wanted the opportunity. People who were good at doing that work. What if we let go of thinking that we needed to do everything ourselves? Now, this doesn't mean letting go of important responsibilities, but it does mean asking for help. Because the truth is, some of us have more responsibility than we need, and others don't have enough. If we did something like this, what would happen? This was the epiphany and paradigm shift that started it all for me. So let me repeat this all one more time, slightly differently. What if we, as in all of us, worked or lived in a place where people only did the things they were not only good at, but also enjoyed doing? What if we gave more responsibility to others who wanted that responsibility? And what if we gave ourselves permission to focus on the things we could do really well? What would happen? In short, good things happened. Incredibly beautiful things. We'd see less waste. We'd see less inefficiency. We'd see less people hiding behind their job titles, fearing they might finally be found out. We'd also see happier and more fulfilled people. We'd see people living with less fear. We'd see people and teams thriving because they finally had the opportunity to show their true value. And well, this was the moment, in this tiny microsecond of my existence, the catalyst for all the incredible things that would happen later in my life. It all started here. But no one seemed to have a name for it. So eventually, I learned to call it living as the authentic you. In the years that followed, I took this faint, thin strand of an idea and started adding to it, building on it, and realizing through my own trial and error, my hard work and sacrifice, through research and chance, that I actually wasn't discovering anything at all. There were others who were working on this idea too. I learned over a decade's time that all of this was already here within me, and that it was already here within you, and within anyone who feels the daily friction between what they know their gifts and talents are and all the other things they actually have to do or are told they have to do, because that's what the job calls for. And what isn't beautiful about that? What isn't beautiful about the world realizing that we don't need to be stuck doing the things that drag us down or pull us back? What isn't right about taking the steps to do more of what we love? More of the things that we were meant to do each and every day? What if each of us could learn to unlock, nurture, and master what it truly means to live as the authentic you? The reality is, we have nothing to lose in taking this journey, but we have so much to lose if we don't. Thank you for listening today. This has been a Mixed Potato Salad production. One final note. If you or someone you know has a mullet and doesn't know that they have a mullet, take my advice and don't tell them, because they'll need to figure out this thing called life for themselves. But I guess at least you could point them to this podcast. And a reminder, if you're loving this podcast, don't forget to subscribe, and please share it with your friends, share it with your coworkers. And because I'm still not sure how this rating system works, please leave us a 5 gold bar rating. And also visit my new YouTube channel, which I have a link in the bio for, with clips and some amazing animation videos to introduce each new weekly podcast. You can also subscribe to the weekly newsletter at The-Inspired.com and visit the career courses page to learn strategies related to how to avoid or remove yourself from your very own version of Serra Pelada using my Authentic You Masterclass, which includes lessons on how to discover, nurture, and master your own strengths. And finally, if you'd like to show your support for this podcast and become a member, visit my Patreon page where I include the backstage secrets of exactly how these podcasts get made, including all the tech, the videos of me producing the content, and all the coffees I drink to get the sounds just right. One warning, the behind the scenes footage might also include some double shot espresso latte tears. Sorry, I don't do decaf. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.